Welcome to this channel called Wisdom. Wisdom, a YouTube channel that I have put together where you can be able to learn or gain wisdom for your life. It is a video channel where you can be able to gain wisdom so that you can be able to solve your personal problems. Many of us, everybody, goes through some kind of situations and circumstances which is a problem that we need to solve those problems. If those problems are left unsolved, they can cause depression, they can bring stress, and they can lead to fatalities. And that's why I have set up this YouTube channel for us all to learn how to solve various problems in our lives. We go through financial problems, marital problems, employment problems, business problems, and many other problems we go through. This is your channel. Subscribe to it and hit the bell so that every time I produce a video, you will be among the first people to receive those videos. I'll be producing videos twice a week, and you'll find videos in this channel called Wisdom Channel. The scripture, the Bible says that in Ephesians chapter 5, that be careful how you live your life. Live as a wise person, not as a foolish person, knowing what the Lord wants you to do in every circumstance. You know, when we are facing problems, like even health problems and many others, sometimes we wonder what we're going to do about it. This is your channel that I want you to subscribe to it. Today, I want to start by recognizing that in our country, Kenya, and worldwide, we are going through this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. And our lives are totally adjusted and totally changed. The way we do things are so different from the way we have been used to do things. And so the question on many people's lips is, right now, during coronavirus, what do I do? And after coronavirus pandemic and we are open up, what am I going to do? Many businesses are closed down. People have lost their jobs. People are wondering, what am I going to do next? Especially in the church. Now we are not able to meet in church buildings. We worship at home. Pastors and reverends who have been depending on big crowds in the church to bring them income, they are now facing a not so sure future. They don't want to do. Hotels are closed. Schools are closed. Many things are closed. And the question is, even during this period and after this period, how will things be? What are we going to do? How are things going to be? And so that's why I'm going to bring you some practical things that you could do. You may be listening to me, watching me, and you may be one of those people whose business have been affected negatively. You may be one of those people who lost your job. You may be one of those, or if the job is still there or business still there, but it is not bringing in the money that you used to get at that time. And so you are wondering, how are things to be? What are we going to feed on? What about your wife? What about your children? How about school fees? How about rent? How are things going to be now that where you have been getting your income, things are not working well? Well, I want you to ask me questions. Write to me and ask me questions so that I can be able to record a video which will give you how to deal with this particular problems. In this today's video, I want to introduce the idea of how you can survive the pandemic, and you can be able to set up your own business, and you can be able to exist and live beyond this coronavirus thing. And I want to start by giving you an example of a servant of God. His name is Moses. As you remember, Moses' birth was really problematic. He was taken up by the Pharaoh's daughter and raised up in Pharaoh's house, and therefore learned all the education and academic things he could be able to accommodate and learn. So he was an academician, and he was, remember, of the Israeli origin. And therefore, when he was about 40 years old, Moses was walking around and he found an Egyptian who was torturing and beating up an Israeli. And Moses intervened and killed that Egyptian. And after that, the life of Moses altered and changed completely. He became into what you call a crisis. Coronavirus is a crisis, and we must be able to know how to survive this crisis. And after this crisis has been ended, how are we going to live our lives? Therefore, Moses ran away. He ran away to the Midian country. And when he ran away in Midian country, Moses was highly educated. In today's terms, Moses could be a professor. But he ran away. And now he became a shepherd. Somebody who was just simply taking care of the sheep, the cattle of his father-in-law's cattle and all those kind of things. You can imagine that. So Moses became a shepherd. And because he became a shepherd, things changed drastically. And one day God visited him, and he wanted him to go back to Egypt and lead the children of Israel from Egypt back to the promised land. And Moses really had an argument with God. But eventually, when Moses was saying, oh, how will I convince the Israelis? How are things going to be? God asked him a question. What is that in your hand? And Moses said, a rod or a staff. And God asked him to throw that stone down, and he threw down on the ground. And that staff turned into a snake. And Moses ran away from it. But God told him, take it back and hold it by its tail. And Moses did exactly that. And then turned back into a staff or a rod. And then he asked him, put your hand into your bosom. And Moses did that. And when he took it out, it was leprous. Then God told him to return the hand back into the bosom. And when he did that and removed it, the hand was okay. Now, when you consider all these things, God was calling Moses to a new kind of life. But he was a shepherd by that time. So, when Moses got to Egypt, he encounters opposition from the Pharaoh, but eventually the Israelis leave Egypt and are headed to the promised land. And they come across the Red Sea, and they want to cross that Red Sea. And behind them, they see the Egyptian army coming for them. They were coming to kill them and return them back to Egypt. They had a crisis of monumental measures. And so Moses was crying to God, what do we do here? And the Israelis were crying and saying, Moses, you should have left us in Egypt, to die in Egypt. There were enough graves in Egypt. Why do you bring us here? They can't cross the Red Sea because it's water. They will all drown. A crisis. And they can't go back because the army is coming after them. A crisis. A crisis like what we have right now in our lives. Every one of us have faced some kind of crisis. So how do you deal with a crisis like right now? The crisis where there's no food, there is not enough money, the economy of the country is almost ruined, and things are so glim. and sow gloom, a crisis. We are facing a crisis on a personal level, on a corporate level, and even on governmental level. We are facing a crisis. What do we do in this situation? I want to suggest some things. So when Moses was crying to God what they were going to do, God asked Moses the same question. You have the rod. What you have in your hand? You have that rod in your hands. Lift up that rod, stretch it towards the water, and the water will part, and then you will walk on the ground, on the dry ground, and cross the Red Sea. Moses did exactly that. Now, in this recording, I want to ask you something this lesson. God is asking you a question. What do you have in your hands? What is that you have in your hands? There is something that you have in your hands that if you use that thing which you have in your hands, you can be able to overcome this crisis on a personal level, and even our government can also overcome this crisis very well. So our idea is to cross over and overcome this crisis. So what do you have in your hands? The Bible uses the hand. The hand symbolizes authority. The hand symbolizes power. The hand symbolizes the hands. We use our hands to do work. Everything we do it with our hands. We work with our hands in our jobs. We work with our hands in the shamba. We work with our hands. Anything, whatever is done in our hands. Maybe there are two things I want to clarify here. There is what we call profession. Profession is something you have been trained to do. Maybe you've been trained to be a teacher. You've been trained to be a banker. You've been trained to be some kind of profession that you've been trained to. Or you have been trained to be a lawyer. You have been trained to be a judge. You've been trained to be whatever you have been trained to do. But then there is what you call trade. The trade is something that is inborn. Every one of us were born with some trade inside us. There is something that God wired us for. Some of us are very good in arranging things. Some of us are very good in doing several other things in our lives. And these things, when we do them, they bring money to us. We make them, we take them to people, and people pay us money for this trade. So there is the trade that we were born with, and there is the profession. Moses professionally was an academician, but in trade he was a shepherd. And that's why he had the symbol of the shepherd, or the tool of being a shepherd was a staff, that rod that he had. And you too, you may have been given a staff by God. You've been given a rod by God with which you can be able to do some trade and gain and even be able to survive this coronavirus thing. For example, myself, I am a trained lecturer, trained teacher. My profession is teaching. And as I've told you, schools and my universities are also closed down. But although we have salary, we are paid salary, yes, but I can't just sit there and wait for me to be given salary. So what I do is that I must be able to discover what else God has given me as a trade. And when I check in my life, I find that God has given me music as a trade. God has given me even farming as a trade. God has endowed in me that I can even take out teachings, and I can teach outside and teach whatever I'm supposed to do. And so let me just mention down some of the tools or some of the trades that God has given to us. And as I mention them, you may discover your trade, what God made you to do. Number one is teacher. Doctor is a profession, but you can do outside also too. nurse, laboratory technologist, manufacturer, lawyer, judge, painter, mason, that is building, the builders of houses, electrician, welder. Welding is a profession, it's also a trade. Glassmat is a trade. Timber is a trade. You can grow trees for timber, and you can also put timber as a trade, and you can sell timber. Groceries, the people who sell vegetables and fruits, that's a trade. Fishmonger is a trade. Clothing is a trade. Hardware is a trade. Beauticians is a trade. Cyber cafe, internet connection is a trade. Bakery, there are people who are very good to make, who can be able to make bread, scones, and many others. That's bakery. Electronics repair, that's a trade. To be a butcher, that's a trade. Goat farming, poultry farming, pig farming, dairy farming, rabbit farming, crop. That means you can be a crop farmer and you can plant maize, millet, beans, groundnuts, and others. You can also do horticulture, which is flowering, flowers. You can also do vegetable farmer. You can be a vegetable farmer. You can farm sukuma wikis, tomatoes, onions, and the rest of them. You can do that. You can also do tree farming. You can farm, you can plant timber tree, and you can also do fruit tree farming. Fruit tree farming, you can plant oranges, mangoes, lemons, avocados, passion, and many other fruits that are needed by you. So you can also do land scrapping or landscaping. You can also do waste collection, and you can also go into transport as a trade. And so all these things are trades. And I believe if you check in your life and God is asking you a question today, what is that in your hand? That means what are your hands able to do? Are there some things that your hands can be able to do? And when you do something with your hands, it becomes your trade. You are able to make things, sell them to people, and get money to sustain yourself. You know, majority of us, we have been used to urban life. We've been used to town life. And majority of us are so fond of employment. We look for employment. In fact, it is from our education system where we were told that do and get good education and then you'll get employment, very good job after you have been. And let me tell you, I tell people this, employees like myself and the rest of many people, you can never be rich when you are an employee. There's no way. Check the rich people in the world, the people with a lot of money in the world are businessmen. These are the people who discovered their trades, what their hands are able to do, the tools that is in your hands, the tools that are in their hands, and they are able to make things and sell them to people, and they have a lot of money, they are rich, they are living, minding their own businesses. Let me tell you, if you are employed like myself, it's good. Manage your job very well. But it's time, a time has come when you need to think of what people call the side hustles. But I call them the trade of your hands, what your hands are able to do.